Welcome to the deep dive. You know the drill. We dig through mountains of info and pull out those golden nuggets of knowledge. Today, it's Amazon's world we're exploring, but hold on, there's a twist.
A twist indeed. We're zeroing in on Amazon specifically after 2014.
Think of it as peeking behind the curtain to see how Amazon went from just books to
Practically everything.
you got it. And our guide for this deep dive, Brad Stone's Amazon Unbound, a book packed with insider stories about
Amazon's big wins, the stumbles along the way, and the strategies that made them a retail titan.
Okay, let's rewind the clock back to 2014. The Fire Phone, remember that? It was a flop.
Oh yeah, definitely a learning experience for Amazon.
But meanwhile, AWS, their cloud service, is starting to gain some serious traction.
Big time. And right in the middle of all this, Jeff Bezos is giving a speech at, get this, the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Costume Institute Gala.
Fancy. What was the big takeaway from that speech?
Bezos basically admitted to being covered in scar tissue from all the mistakes he'd made along the way.
Covered in scar tissue. Huh.
Oh.
Sounds kind of brutal, but I guess it makes sense.
It was a pretty powerful statement. He owned up to the Fire Phone failure, but emphasized that Amazon's whole culture was about taking risks.
And learning from those risks, even the ones that blow up in your face.
Exactly. This fail fast, learn fast mentality became a key part of their DNA. But it's worth noting, it wasn't all sunshine and roses for Amazon during this time.
What do you mean?
Well, even with all their success, they were starting to face some serious heat.
Heat from.
People were getting more and more concerned about things like their environmental impact and how they were treating their blue-collar workers. This was like the early rumbling of what would later become the techlash.
Okay. So you've got this backdrop of huge wins, but also some growing pains. And then Amazon makes a move that changes everything. They go all in on the marketplace.
Massive shift. Instead of just selling stuff themselves, they open up the platform to third-party sellers.
And right alongside that comes Fulfillment by Amazon, FBA.
Oh yeah, FBA was a game changer. Bezos had this vision. He called it the flywheel effect. The idea was more sellers means more choice for customers.
More choice, which then attracts even more shoppers. And that leads to lower prices and faster shipping.
You got it. And those things, in turn, bring in even more shoppers and sellers. It's a self-reinforcing loop of growth.
A virtuous cycle, they like to call it. But I'm guessing it wasn't all smooth sailing with this marketplace explosion.
Well, initially, everyone loved it. Small businesses, entrepreneurs, they flocked to Amazon.
I bet. It was like striking gold. Suddenly you have access to this massive customer base.
Right. You have stories like Stefan Arstall, this paddleboard entrepreneur, built his entire business on Amazon. But then
There's always a but, isn't there?
it opened the floodgates, especially for Chinese manufacturers.
I see where this is going. Lower prices are great for shoppers, but not so much for businesses trying to compete.
Especially those who couldn't match those super low production costs. Some brands, like Birkenstock, actually pulled out of Amazon entirely.
They did. Why?
They said Amazon wasn't doing enough to stop counterfeit products, that it was hurting their brand.
Interesting. So we've got this marketplace booming, Chinese competition heating up, and then Amazon throws another curveball. They unveil their SCRECAP strategy.
Crap, you say. Sounds appealing.
Well, it stands for Consumables, Recurring Purchases, and Products. Basically, they decided to target all those everyday essentials.
So groceries, household goods, things people buy over and over again?
Exactly. High volume, low margin stuff. I guess they figured if people are already on Amazon buying everything else.
Why not get them to buy their toilet paper and toothpaste from us too?
Right. And they didn't stop there. They started developing their own private label brands like Happy Belly and Wickedly Prime.
They used all that data they had to see what was selling well, what gaps were in the market, and then bam, they created their own versions.
Pretty clever, but I bet that didn't sit well with some of the other sellers on their platform.
It definitely raised some eyebrows. People started accusing them of using their platform data to gain an unfair advantage.
It's like they were playing both sides of the game, the platform A and D, the competitor.
Right. And that's a theme we'll see pop up again and again as we go deeper into their post-2014 moves.
Sounds like things are about to get even more interesting.
Oh, they definitely do. Welcome back. Ready for more Amazon adventures?
Absolutely. Last time we saw Amazon transform into this massive marketplace, pulling in sellers and shoppers left and right. But it wasn't without its
Controversies.
Exactly. Chinese competition was heating up, questions about how they were using their own brands against other sellers on the platform.
Yeah, it was getting complicated. And we can't forget about their adventures in the grocery world.
Oh yeah, their grocery dreams go way back.
Yeah.
Didn't Amazon Fresh launch like forever ago.
You're right, it launched back in 2007.
2007. But it took them ages to expand beyond Seattle.
Bezos had this idea, pre-dawn deliveries.
Pre-dawn. Like before the birds are even awake.
Yeah, I know, right? But he figured it'd save on costs, avoid traffic.
Definitely a Bezos kind of move. Got to give him that. But then, things get interesting.
Competition arrives, right?
Instacart, Google Express, everyone's jumping into the grocery delivery game.
Amazon felt the pressure. That's when they launched Prime. Now remember, it was a rapid rollout and definitely not cheap.
So they're trying to conquer groceries while building this massive logistics network at the same time. And then, boom, they buy Whole Foods.
Game changer. 2017, they drop over $13 billion to acquire Whole Foods. They were serious about groceries, even if
merging those two worlds was a bit of a headache, I imagine.
Yeah, integrating those two companies wasn't easy. But speaking of headaches, Amazon's logistics journey was one for the books.
They went all in, didn't they?
Absolutely. They knew they couldn't rely solely on existing shipping companies if they wanted to control the whole experience, Faster deliveries, happy customers.
So basically, they became their own UPS, their own FedEx.
Pretty much. And it started way back in 2012 when they bought Kiva Systems. Remember those cool warehouse robots?
Oh, yeah. Zipping around, fetching products. It was like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It was pretty wild, but even with all that investment, there were hiccups.
Oh, I bet. What kind of hiccups?
The 2013 holiday season shipping meltdown, for one. There were issues with their delivery drivers, working conditions, and don't forget that tragic Amazon Prime Air cargo plane crash.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of growing pains.
But ultimately, that massive investment paid off. It gave them control over their supply chain like no other company.
And that's how they could offer those lightning-fast deliveries, right?
Exactly. One-day shipping, same-day delivery, free grocery delivery for Prime members. It was a game changer.
So they're dominating e-commerce, taking over groceries, building a logistics empire, and then they decide to tackle advertising.
It makes sense, doesn't it? They had this huge platform, millions of shoppers, and tons of data about what people were buying.
Yeah, it's a goldmine for advertisers.
It is. But, Amazon's known for their frugal culture.
To put it mildly.
Right. And the world of advertising with all those fancy parties and client perks, it was a bit of a clash.
Can you imagine Bezos at a swanky ad agency party? I don't think he'd fit in.
He probably wouldn't. But even with those early struggles, their ad business took off. Remember, they had something no one else did. Data on actual purchases, not just clicks.
That's a huge difference. It's like knowing someone's not just browsing for shoes, but actually bought a pair last week.
Right, and it worked. Brands started flocking to Amazon to reach those highly targeted shoppers.
Makes sense. But while this is happening, Bezos himself is starting to branch out. Blue Origin, his space exploration company, and the Washington Post, which he bought back in 2013.
Always the visionary, that guy. Space travel, journalism, he's got his fingers in a lot of pies.
And with Blue Origin, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Budget issues, rocket crashes, trying to find a CEO.
Even Bezos doesn't get it right every time.
That's a good reminder for all of us. But with the Washington Post, he turned it into a digital powerhouse, right?
He did. Invested in technology, pushed digital subscriptions, brought his data-driven approach to the newsroom.
Didn't that cause some friction with the old school journalists?
Oh yeah, definitely some clashes. Remember that idea he had? Hire amazing writers, but cut back on editors. Didn't go over so well.
I bet. But the numbers don't lie. Subscriptions went up, their investigative reporting got even stronger.
He made a big impact for sure. But back to Amazon. While all this is happening, they're facing increasing scrutiny from the public. Remember those early rumblings of the techlash we talked about?
Oh yeah, it was starting to get real.
And that leads us to one of the most controversial chapters in Amazon's history, the HQ2 saga.
That was a wild ride.
Yeah.
Amazon decides they need a second headquarters, and it becomes this massive public competition.
Cities all over North America were practically begging Amazon to come to them, offering tax breaks, all sorts of incentives.
It was a PR spectacle for sure, but it sparked a lot of backlash too, right?
Yeah, people started asking, is this fair? Should taxpayers be subsidizing one of the richest companies in the world?
And it got really heated in Seattle, where Amazon was already facing pushback over its impact on housing costs and the cost of living. Remember the head tax controversy? Seattle tries to tax big businesses to fund homelessness services, and Amazon throws a fit.
They threatened to halt construction projects, even talked about subleasing office space to make a point.
It was a power play. And in the end, the city backed down, repealed the tax.
But it left a bad taste in people's mouths. showed just how much tension there was between Amazon and its hometown.
And it foreshadowed what would happen with HQ2. They ultimately chose 2 locations.
Northern Virginia, which went smoothly.
And Long Island City, New York, which was a complete disaster.
Total PR nightmare. There was fierce local opposition, politicians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez leading the charge, and Amazon made some missteps.
They underestimated the power of community organizing, how much resentment there was towards big tech. It was a wake-up call. The techlash was real, and it could hurt them.
So you've got the techlash heating up, HQ2 blowing up in their face, and then the pandemic hits.
The whole world shuts down, and suddenly everyone's relying on Amazon for everything. Talk about pressure. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're wrapping up our look at Amazon post-2014. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has. From e-commerce dominance to those wild grocery adventures and facing that growing techlash, they've been through a lot.
And as we left off, the pandemic had just turned the world upside down. Suddenly, Amazon wasn't just a big company. They were practically essential.
Right. People stuck at home, needing everything from groceries to, home office supplies, all delivered.
Their delivery drivers became frontline workers. Those warehouses working overtime.
It was a massive logistical challenge, but also a chance for them to show what they could do.
So did they rise to the occasion?
It's a mixed bag, to be honest. They did keep things moving, kept delivering when so many supply chains were broken.
That's got to count for something.
It does. But at the same time, there were those worries about worker safety, the protests at fulfillment centers, and remember Chris Smalls.
The warehouse worker who organized that protest.
Yeah, he got fired, but his story became a symbol of this growing movement within Amazon, workers demanding better conditions.
It highlighted that tension, right? Amazon is this vital service during a crisis, but also a company facing accusations of putting profits over people.
Exactly. And it wasn't just Smalls. Tim Bray, a VP, quit in protest over how Amazon treated whistleblowers.
Oh, so even with their stock price through the roof, there was this internal turmoil going on.
Definitely. And all that public pressure, did it change anything?
Well, they did start raising wages for warehouse workers, more safety measures.
And they got a lot more active with the media, talking about sustainability, supporting small businesses.
It felt like a bit of a PR shift, trying to soften that image of the big, cold corporation.
Makes sense. But the real test was whether those changes were going to last.
Actions speak louder than words, as they say. But meanwhile, that antitrust scrutiny that had been simmering for years, it really boiled over.
That House Judiciary Subcommittee report, it was pretty brutal. It was, calling Amazon out for anti-competitive practices, even suggesting they might need to be broken up.
That gave a lot of fuel to regulators, both in the US and Europe, to start taking a closer look at Amazon's power.
Lawsuits started popping up everywhere about their e-commerce dominance, how they treated third-party sellers, their data practices, you name it.
It sounds like they were under attack from all sides.
They were. Workers pushing for change, the public eye watching their every move, and now the legal system coming after them.
Right in the middle of all that, 2021, Bezos steps down as CEO.
Big news. He handed the reins over to Andy Jassy, who was running AWS.
A lot of people wondered, why then? Was it just Bezos wanting to focus on space travel and his other projects?
Maybe. Or was it strategic, a way to try and deflect some of that negative attention? Tough to say for sure.
But it was a new era for Amazon, even if those core challenges remained.
Right. How do they keep growing while also dealing with worker concerns, regulators breathing down their neck, and public opinion?
Do they adapt or just keep doing what they've always done? What happened?
Well, one of the biggest things was that unionization effort at the Staten Island warehouse in 2022. Remember, Amazon fought it hard, but
The workers voted to form a union.
they did. The first successful union within Amazon in the U.S., it sent shockwaves through the company.
And it showed that even a giant like Amazon wasn't unbeatable.
Exactly. Workers could organize, demand better treatment, and win. And even though other union drives weren't as successful, it put pressure on Amazon to improve wages and benefits.
So they're dealing with this new wave of labor activism, those antitrust lawsuits still looming, trying to stay on top.
It forced them to change, to be more flexible. They keep investing in AWS, their cash cow, but now they've got competition in the cloud from Microsoft, from Google.
And they're still buying up companies like crazy. iRobot, the Roomba people. It's a lot of data about people's homes.
It's all about building that ecosystem, right?
That's the Amazon of today, I guess.
Yeah.
Still pushing boundaries, but with everyone watching their every move.
No more scrappy underdog, that's for sure.
What a transformation. From an online bookstore to this massive force that's woven into almost everything we do. What do you think the future holds for them?
That's the big question, isn't it? Can they keep growing at this breakneck pace while also being, well, a good corporate citizen, taking care of workers, listening to concern?
Can they be both incredibly powerful and responsible? We'll have to wait and see.
And those answers, they're going to matter for all of us. Amazon's not just a company anymore. It's practically a part of life.
This deep dive, it's just a snapshot of their journey. But it's a reminder that even the biggest companies are constantly evolving.
And they're shaped by all of us, by the choices we make, the expectations we have. So think about it. What do you want the future of Amazon to look like?
That's something to ponder. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Keep exploring.